Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. It's great to be with you this morning. It's early. It's about 2 in the morning, and I appreciate you all being with us again for another update. Got a lot of things to talk to you about today. The Getsy announcement was finally made final. We're going to talk a little bit more about Luke, not a lot more, but a little bit more. Um, we're going to get into that a little bit. We're going to get into a lot on the quarterback position with the Raiders. What do I think it looks like? Who do I think's in play? Who it's not in play? What about trading up? We're going to get into that. Then also, I got to spend some time with Maxx Crosby yesterday at Sunrise Mountain High School here in Las Vegas. Had a great conversation with him, both in a scrum, a press conference, and then privately. We're going to get into that a lot, and then a couple of other things. So I'm looking forward to this podcast. I hope that you are too. Thank you for tuning in. I'm just going to tell you, we have grown exponentially. Literally tens of thousands of you are watching these. I think people love getting their Raider content every single day. Years ago, Paul Bear Bryant, when he was the head coach at Alabama, went to the local newspapers and said, there will be a story about Alabama football in the newspaper every day. It's that big of a deal. I've had a lot of people ask me about doing a podcast every day. Is it going to quit? No, this is one of the most iconic franchises in all of sports, in all of it. And no, there should be a broadcast every single day on this team, and there will be. And we're going to get into all different kinds of stuff. We have so many amazing guests lined up during the off season. I just can't wait to share them all with you. And we're going to be bringing some of you on. We're going to be bringing some fans on. We're going to be bringing on players. We're going to be bringing on a lot of things that I think you're going to really enjoy, and I think are going to be a huge time for you. Some of it's going to be great history lessons. Some of it's going to be great learning some things. We're just really going to dig deep and get in with you on the nuances of the Raiders and, of course, on the game of football. Very quickly, if you live in Texas, that's such a big place. Let's be more specific. In the San Antonio range, I'm going to be in San Antonio on Tuesday, the 5th. Now, if you check my social media, we have the information with the San Antonio Black Hole chapter. It's completely free. It's from 6 to 7:30. We would love to meet you. I don't always bring my wife and Dexter to meetups. I'm going to be bringing them to San Antonio with me. So make sure seating is limited, but it's 100% free. You get in there, get your food. You pay for your own food and drinks, but it's completely free. And we'll come in, and it's an hour and a half of Raider talk. Usually I spend about 45 minutes talking to you about some things that are going on, maybe things I haven't reported on, or maybe more details on some things. And then we open up the floor, and we talk Raiders, and I share with you things that I believe or whatever. And it's a wonderful night of Raiders. You'll get to meet a lot of Raider fans. If you're not part of the San Antonio Black Hole chapter, that doesn't matter. You're welcome, but get a chance to meet a bunch of Raiders that are there in your state. So maybe you can get together with some people and watch games. It's a great event. I do these all over the country. When groups ask me if there's enough people who want it, we will go there, and it costs nothing. So if you have a group of Raider fans, I was asked recently, would you go to Australia or would you go to England? Yes, absolutely. Would you go to Mexico? Yes. If you got enough people, we'll come there. And but we love to talk Raiders. So go check out my social media and make sure that you check that out. It'll be a great event. I look forward to meeting you. You get a chance to meet Shannon and Dexter, and it's just a great time with Raider fans. It used to be, Shannon would say to me, I'm going, so I would leave and go to these events. Well, as you know, she's all in. She's a Raider fan. She's raising Dexter. He's going to be a Raider fan. And she's like, I'm not missing a chance to meet a bunch of Raiders. So she's going to be there. It'll be a lot of fun. Please make sure you check it out. Also, I promised you another deep dive. It's coming. When it comes out, you're going to understand. I've never had a deep dive before that's more than one article. This is actually going to probably be three, could be as many as five. I don't want it to be that long. I think people get tired of series when they're that long, but it's going to be an extremely deep dive. And I think you're going to really enjoy it as a Raider. Some of my deep dives I know make people frustrated. Um, I don't think there's anything in this one that's going to frustrate anybody. It's you'll understand when it comes out. I don't want to say too much. I don't want to give it away. Um, but I think it's going to be very important for you. Additionally, we are putting out massive amounts of draft prospect reports. These are guys that we know that the Raiders are interested in. There's a couple of them that we've actually invited to come on the podcast, and they're going to. You may remember last year we had on Kalijah Cansey, and a couple others. But we've invited them. They've quickly accepted. These are guys that we know the Raiders have some interest in and could potentially end up Raiders. And I think you're going to be excited with those coming up. That's going to be really good. So lots of great stuff coming up. I appreciate all of you. Tremendously respect all of you. And thank you for listening, for reading and subscribing and sharing. Now, most media is a paywall, and ours isn't. Yesterday, I think we did 14 stories plus videos plus content, other content, 100% free. And so what I encourage you to do is go up, hit the subscribe button. That way you never miss anything else. The other thing you need to do so you never miss another big Raider story is go to si.com/NFL/Raiders. While you're there, of course, you check everything out, but the upper right-hand corner, it says newsletter. Click on it, and you will very quickly sign up for our newsletter. In that newsletter, we never spam you. We don't sell your information, but 3 times a week, you'll get our biggest stories to make sure you never miss anything else. All right, let's dig in. I want to start with the Raiders make it official on Luke Getsy. I already did the other day a story about his background, what intrigued him. Several NFL teams were interested in him. I believe I know there was one team that was about to make him an offer, and another that I was told by someone in the organization was probably going to make him an offer. The Raiders, as soon as the Cliff situation ended, went right back to him because he was so impressive. He had finished a close second to Cliff, and they wanted to secure him before somebody else got him. I got a bunch of emails, and you guys know, I try to really listen. If one or two people, for example, when we gave away the shoes, we talked about you had to include your name, your address, and your shoe size. And you could only send one email per email address. I can't tell you the number of people that were automatically just thrown out because 2 or 3 emails, or people sending me messages on social media. Hey, what was your email? Well, we delivered it in the podcast, but you have to stay through and listen. I really read your emails and comments. As long as you're not a flamer. Someone asked me yesterday, did you learn a new word? Actually, yeah, I did. But as you know, if people are just being rude or nasty, just mute. I don't pay attention to that. But a lot of people have really good opinions who disagree with me, and that's fine. I'm not God. Um, I don't have a problem if anybody disagrees. But people get mean or hateful, you just click, or just obnoxious. But I got a lot of emails after the Luke Getsy podcast, and I thought, when I say a lot, I would guess between 75 and 125. So I was going to say 100 from people all pretty much saying close to the same thing. Hondo, appreciate that you shared stuff about Cliff, and I appreciate you shared stuff about Luke. But do you think it looks bad? That was the first question. And the second one is there anything negative that you can point out? And I understand that people wondering, am I just being a Kool-Aid person? And which is not what I do. But you know this, I'm going to give Coach AP 20 games. He gets 20 games. So did Josh McDaniels. And you may remember after 20 games, I was very, very tough in how I graded him. And AP deserves to pick the staff he wanted. When people said, well, okay, I support AP getting the job, but he has to hire this person. No, if you trust somebody enough to um, have them as your head coach, then um, you let them pick their staff. Let them fail or succeed on their own. Now, AP, I want to address the Getsy thing. I've said it before, but I'll address it again. It's not a good look when your first choice bails. That's completely fair. That's not that's not um, a good look. I 100% agree with that. Now, I think there's being some revisionist history from some people about why Cliff didn't take the job. First of all, it's totally true um, that the Raiders offered him a 2-year deal. That's factual. But the Raiders were not cheap. The Raiders were being smart. Okay. He's failed a lot in his career. So here's 2 years to come in and prove you're going to be a team player and you're going to have success. You're going to be able to take this roster and do something with it. And you got fired at Texas Tech, didn't win big. And you got fired with the Cardinals, didn't win big. There were times the team really flashed and times it just looked like, what? That's AP and Tom Telesco being wise. The Raiders are not broke. I've said that so many times. Some people just want to believe things that aren't truthful, and you can't fix that. But that was them being in guarding the franchise. There were other issues involved, and those were convenient, but Cliff decided not to be here. And guess what? He did the Raiders a favor. Nobody should be mad at Cliff. If his heart wasn't totally set on being here, God bless him. Wish him well. Hope he does well. But you had Getsy that wanted to be here. Again, other teams still had interest, but he wanted to be here. The Raiders were very impressed with Getsy. And I didn't talk about this the other day, but when they went up there and played that team without Justin, and you saw the way that offense worked with a new quarterback, not a lot of experience, undrafted, and you saw the toughness of that offense and the way that it operated, it really impressed the Raiders, even impressed the Raiders at the time. And if I were you, I'd go back and watch my podcast from right after the game. I talked about that. So that really stuck out to them. And there were some things that happened in Chicago. Someone said, are you saying that absolutely none of it was Getsy's fault? No, I'm not saying that at all. But he had a boss and he had to follow what his boss wanted done. And that is a huge factor. And it was something that the Raiders were able to go and, is this an excuse or is this reality? And they were able to ascertain, yeah, that's exactly the truth. And so they get their guy in Getsy. It's officially announced. I know a lot of people, because of what happened with Cliff, were panicking a little bit. There was no need to panic, but they got their guy. Now, none of us is God. Not one of us knows if AP is going to be a great success or a great failure. None of us knows if Getsy is going to. But we know this. In the NFL draft, about 60% of quarterbacks picked in the first round are essentially a fail. So when you pick a quarterback in the first round, it is a crapshoot. Okay. A lot of coaches get hired to get fired in the NFL. I mean, Bill Belichick, parting of ways. But for those of you that are long term listeners to this podcast, you knew that was coming. I was the first one to talk about the story. When I said, I'm hearing if Bill doesn't get to the playoffs, he's out. And I said that, and that's on the record. Um, uh, Fox Sports Radio with Rob Parker. Um, Rob Parker and I were talking about it yesterday. I mean, he said you were the first one even to remotely say this nationally, because I was told by people part of the organization. Um, so when you hire, you have to eliminate as much risk as possible. We wrote a bunch of articles lately on Tom Telesco. I really encourage you to go back and read those articles if you didn't, getting into his philosophy. Um, just what's the Telesco doctrine? And he talked about he doesn't want any surprises on draft night. And they'll go back to high school. They'll talk to guys, teachers in high schools, janitors in high schools, all of that. I'm going to share a funny story with you because I know this to be 100% factual. I know of a college that produces a lot of NFL talent. And there is a bar in that city that a lot of the football players like to go to. And I know an NFL team that has the bar manager and a couple of bouncers that they pay money to. Hey, what's this kid like? Give me some information if something happens. Um, I know about a player on the team that was expected to go very high in the draft who plummeted because after a bowl game, went into the bar and made a fool of himself, and it really made people nervous. I know of teams that have social media accounts um, that don't have the appearance of the person who's running them. You can figure out what I'm saying because they want to know what are guys like. They go back and do their so you do all of your due diligence. It's like Bill Parcells says, and you heard me and John Shop talk about this. I think it was last week, or it could have been 2 shows ago, but I think it was last week. I think it was 2,500 passes. He goes, I want to see a guy who was a 3-year starter and threw 2,500 passes in college. Because if the more passes I have to watch, the more I have to evaluate. I did a show with Jonathan Shop right after the Bears picked Mitchell Trubisky, a 1-year guy, didn't have a lot of numbers. And I said, hey, if that's your guy, you are willing to gamble if you believe it, but you're gambling your career. But I wouldn't. There wasn't enough to judge him by. I agree with that. Now, the way the game has changed, you're probably not going to find very many guys that are 3-year starters. But the point is you want as much information as you can get on any player because the more you have, you minimize risk. Preparation minimizes risk. And in the National Football League, the higher the draft pick, meaning round, you have to minimize even more risk. Listen, it's a crapshoot if your 7th rounder is going to make it. It's questionable if your 6th rounder is going to make it. But rounds 1 through 5, those guys you expect to make it. And each one, there's a little bit more responsibility. So it's the same way with a coach. That's why I've always said when you're an iconic brand like the Las Vegas Raiders, you don't want to go get a coach with no head coaching experiences in the National Football League. I don't think it's smart. Okay. I'm on the AP train. And I think those interim games, were a big teacher to him. I would not have picked Antonio Pierce to coach his team without the interim. but he got the interim to get his feet wet, to learn a little bit about being a head coach. I think he did phenomenal. Now I'm riding the Antonio Pierce train. And uh, I think you minimize risk by bringing in an Antonio Pierce. Completely minimize risk, completely minimize it. And you want to make that window of failure as small as you can. And so with Getsy, um, someone said, so I was asked, do you have anything negative? I would give you a couple things. First of all, for whatever reason, he wasn't the first choice. And but I think that works out. How many things in your life, Garth Brooks has that song. Sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayers. I think there are sometimes you dodge a bullet. Now, I told you that Cliff really wowed them in the interview, which was true. He did. I also told you I had concerns about Cliff, how he was with Johnny Manziel. If you went back and watched, I think it was on Netflix, but there was a documentary about Johnny Manziel. Um, I was concerned about, at Texas Tech, where he gets fired, goes to Arizona, and doesn't succeed there. There were some great things he did, but a lot of questionable things. I had issues about Cliff, not personally as a man or his integrity, just about as a coach. But to me, you let AP ride the train. And if that's who he wanted, he's got to be able to pick the people. You know, he should be able to buy the groceries if he's going to be in charge of cooking the meal, which is a Bill Parcells line. Now, Cliff Kingsbury is a man of integrity. Okay, someone said, well, Hondo's always saying this about everybody. No, mm-mm. There's lots of people I haven't said it about. I'm just not going to use this platform to trash people. You know the old saying, if you have nothing good to say, don't say it. So if I don't know them to be a person of integrity, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. But Cliff's a man of integrity. He just decided I don't want to be with the Raiders, so he leaves. Okay. And then you go get Getsy. And you can go back and look before they hired an OC. I told you, don't rule out Getsy, because I knew even after the Bears game that they were really impressed with him, especially the Raiders defensive coaches were very impressed with him. I knew what happened at Mississippi State, where, he didn't have a great head coach, but he was in charge of his offense and he did a great job. I know I have friends who played in Green Bay when he was there. I know what they thought of him. I have one particular friend that was a lineman, and I know what they thought of him. I know the respect LaFleur had for him. I know the respect that Mike McCarthy had for him. And then um, I know the respect of people within the Bears organization, what they had for him. So I think it was a good hire. Would Getsy have been the choice I would have made if I was Antonio Pierce? I don't know that. I wasn't in the interview. And one of the things that I really respect of what Antonio Pierce did, he didn't go in with this saying, okay, Cliff Kingsbury is my main target, or Luke Getsy, or Chip Kelly, or whomever. He went in saying, I want to interview a lot of people. I want to give people an opportunity to wow me. I want to give them an opportunity to show me what they think. And because he was open-minded, that's how he settled on Getsy. Now, that brings us to the other one. Someone said to me, what about any concern? Yeah, here's another one. Okay. Cliff Kingsbury, what he traditionally has done, and Luke Getsy are two polar opposites. Polar opposites. All right. So I think a rational person thinking rationally, using didactic reasoning, you'd say, wow, that looks like it's all over the place because the two men run such different offenses. I think that's a fair criticism. But when you go behind the scenes, both men in the interview talked about not being married to a system as much as being married to winning and adapting. Nick Saban and Bill Belichick did a show together. Wish I could remember where it was at. I think it's on Max, but I apologize. But it was a great show, phenomenal show. And they talked about as they got older in their careers, realizing each team is different. Each team evolves a different way. You may target a guy in the draft, but he's not there. I know for a fact the Broncos had targeted Aiden O'Connell this year. They really liked him. They wanted him. And boom, they were trying to get ahead of the Raiders. Some people didn't move, and the Raiders were able to take Aiden, who was very high on their quarterback list. Okay, well, imagine if the Denver had jumped in front. So I think it's really important to understand and to ascertain that they went into this not married to a system. So I can see where the concern is. Man, here's Cliff, here's Getsy. Is that something to be worried about? I think it is if you don't understand how the interview process went. I think it's absolutely a fair and germane criticism. Well, you didn't get your main guy. Okay. I wasn't my wife's first choice. And I remember telling her when I asked her to marry me, it wasn't your first choice. But say yes, and I'll make sure that I don't regret that you made me your last choice. And she did, thank God. And so that's how I approach it. But my deal is that if you trust AP and you wanted AP to be your coach, then trust him to pick his staff. It's not like the guy wants to lose. He understands this is his dream job. He understands he's only, if he fails miserably, the chances are he's not going to get another chance. So if he's willing to use a Vegas term, go all in, put his chips in the table on Getsy, and it's his future, ride with it. Now, if you didn't want AP as a coach and you're disappointed in it, okay, I can see where you would say, you know what, I don't like this. He just gets the job and doesn't get his first guy. Okay, that's fine. I think those are fair and germane criticisms. But if you're a Raider now, he is your coach. Luke Getsy is your offensive coordinator. Saddle up and ride. That's just the reality of the situation. Now, I want to talk about quarterbacks. I think this is really super important. I want to first give you some factual information, and then I'm going to give you opinion. And it's opinion based on experience and information, and then being being a critical thinker. Let's use that term. So Aiden O'Connell is going to be a part of this team. He's on a cheap deal. He's got several years left on his rookie deal. And whether you think so or not, he had a tremendous rookie season. Now, would it have been a tremendous season for an Aaron Rodgers? Of course not. Patrick Mahomes? No. But go look at the stats twice. Well, not, excuse me. Go look at the stats when he played his worst game in Los Angeles with Josh McDaniels, who would do nothing to help him. Statistically, he was better than Herbert. And Herbert is, I mean, the belle of the ball. People love Herbert. Most, not all, but most. And he did it as a rookie. He did it without AP having his OC. He did it without two offensive coaches. Because remember, Mick Lombardi and Josh were both offensive coaches. They were gone. He did it limited. And AP went to him and said, listen, I need you to stop. I don't need you taking unnecessary risks because I don't need you to go win football games. Just protect the football When opportunities there and we call the shots, we'll take the throws down the field, but we're going to run the football, trust your arm, trust our defense to stop people. Last 9 games, 9 touchdowns, 1 interception. Last 4 games, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. Okay. Saying he had a tremendous rookie year is like me walking into Jenny Craig. Okay, I'm 256 pounds. I've lost 180 pounds, no surgery. I may, depending on the group, be the skinniest fat person there, but I'm still fat. Nobody's saying he played like any of those guys. But dear Lord, somebody give the kid a little bit of slack. It was his rookie year, and he did exactly what his coach wanted. And oh, by the way, they finished 5-4. And perhaps if they would have turned him loose a little bit more, or had their OC, or had training camps or OTAs or mini camps, maybe they would have been able to cut him loose a little bit, and they would have won a Minnesota game or a few others. Now, this isn't me saying, and somebody's going to run off, Hondo says that Aiden O'Connell's Patrick Mahomes, whatever, flamer. No, I think we've seen enough from him to say he could be a QB1. I also think we've seen enough to say the jury's still out. And by the way, and I have a tremendous relationship with Aiden O'Connell. I get along with him terrifically. I believe those would be his words. Nothing proven. He knows that they're going to bring quarterbacks in. He knows that. He's very confident. He's never once been afraid to compete. He went to Purdue where he was like 6th or 8th on the depth chart, moves all the way to the top. Would have been a first rounder had he come out the year before. Instead goes back because Purdue had never won a Big Ten championship or gone to the Big Ten championship game. Goes back because he's a competitor. His brother passes away, goes through some tragedy. And what's he do? Competes. Slips out of the first round because Purdue wasn't a haven of great talent. But he's fine with it. He's going to embrace whoever they pick, help teach them the ropes, give them the new system. But a lot of it's going to be new, so he's going to be learning it too. But this doesn't bother him. And I'll tell you this, no matter when I'm covering football, any player at any position that doesn't want competition, you don't want. Bring it on. Saddle up the horse. Let's ride. So that. Now, I'm going to get into some conjecture here for a moment. The Raiders are going to have new quarterbacks. We know that. Hondo opinion, now again, this is based on experience, things I've heard, knowledge, and critical thinking. I believe, based on where Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels are projected, the Raiders moving up is highly unlikely. Now, I don't think there's any chance they're moving up to get Caleb at 1. Somebody is going to pick him there. There's enough shiny on him that people like. Again, though, me talking to proven quarterback drafting people, they've all said he's going to go number 1 or number 2, maybe 3, but he'll never get past 3 because there are certain teams who always draft. I mean, who are always losing, who will either pick them or go up and get them. So there you go. Drake May is a guy that a lot of teams are very high on, and he'll go. Jaden Daniels is a guy a lot of teams are very high on. So again, Hondo opinion is, I think getting any of those 3 is highly unlikely just because of the cost, because a lot of teams are going to be bidding. If they win up, I think at this point, Jaden would go as the 3rd quarterback taken. And I think if they had their choice today, and let me just tell you this, and this is not opinion, this is factual, they have not made any decision yet. No decision has been made. And I've seen people say they've decided to go up for Jaden. Absolutely. I can tell you this 100% not true. Not true. It doesn't mean they won't. They haven't made any decision like that at all. If I was being, again, opinion, I would think that of the three, they would, if they moved up, and I think it's highly unlikely at this point, doesn't mean it won't change because throughout the process, they may learn some things, whatever. But I think throughout the process, um, if I had to pick right now, if they moved up for one, it would be Jaden. But I think it's highly unlikely at this point. Now, you've got some interesting things. Um, you've got some interesting stuff with Penix, who's a terrific quarterback. He's absolutely terrific. But every team I know that's a good drafting team is saying they love Penix, but he has been injured so much in his career that you just cannot spend the draft capital that it would take on somebody with a history like that of injury. I thought that was fascinating. In fact, one scout said to me, um, and one executive said, do you go up and give up capital for Penix, who's injured as much as Jimmy Garoppolo has been? I wasn't, you know, when he was at Indiana. Those are all very fair criticism. Now, you may be of the group that says, yeah, that's behind him. He's a great quarterback. And I agree. Michael Penix is a great quarterback. And so if you're convinced that the injury bug is behind him, then maybe that's not as big of a risk for you. We don't know where the Raiders sit right now. Bo Nix, um, talking to people who I trust, think there are some issues, and I don't know if I'm able to voice this one, so I'm going to wait and I'll double check. But uh, there are. He's a leader of men. He's tough, but there are some accuracy issues and some issues with him that you have to ask yourself. Okay, in the first round, are you willing to spend a pick on somebody where that's first round capital? Are you willing to do that on a guy that you have a second round grade on? Now, you may remember Judd Heathcote. He won the national title with Michigan State when they had um, Irvin Magic Johnson, Jay Vincent, Greg Kelser, Kevin Smith, all those great teams, and they beat Larry Bird. Years later, he was coaching a guy named Eric Snow. Now, Eric played in the NBA for many, many years. His brother Percy was a Butkus Award winner in college, went on and was a first round draft pick of the Kansas City Chiefs. And he sits down, Judd Heathcote sits down with Eric Snow and says, I'm going to move you to point guard. And he goes, Coach, I'm not a point guard and I want to play in the NBA. Judd Heathcote told him something that is true no matter what sport. He said, it only takes one team to fall in love with you in the draft. Now, I want to go back, and this is documented, by the way. This is not opinion. Years ago, my mock draft, I was on Mike and Mike TV show and all of that. I was the first national writer, the only one that I know of. I'm sure someone else did, but that I knew of, that in my mock draft had Tim Tebow going in the first round to the Broncos. And he did, to Josh McDaniels. I had gotten information that the Broncos were in love with him and were going to pick him. Now, no other team that I talked to that year um, had him with a first round grade. Every other team, the majority had him with a second round grade. There were some with a third and the rest with a fourth. But only one team I knew wanted him in the first round, and that was the Denver Broncos. Okay. So it doesn't matter if there are a lot of teams that think there are issues with Bo Nix, not character issues, not just concerns accuracy, whatever. Maybe runs a little too quick, doesn't stay in the pocket, whatever. But if one team falls in love with him, it's all that matters. Now, I know the Raiders have great interest in JJ McCarthy. And I told you the other day of a scout that told me when I did my first mock draft, right now, if the draft were today, he would go in the first round. But there's going to be a lot of teams that get to know him. And after his pro day, his stock is going to skyrocket. Now, this team that drafts extremely well in the NFL draft for quarterbacks, extremely well. They told me they had McCarthy as their number one quarterback on the board. If they were picking a quarterback, they would pick JJ. They're not, but I think that was fascinating about JJ. He completes 73% of his passes. If you're concerned he hasn't thrown a lot, Michigan didn't have to. Most of the time, they were running out leads. There was one game, I think it was Penn State, where they ran 30 times in a row. But you go watch him put the Alabama film in, put the Washington film in when he had to throw. I mean, the Alabama game, their defensive backfield had 3 first rounders, 2 corners and a safety, and another safety that's could be a first. If not, it'll be a second. And he looked outstanding. And he runs, but like Patrick Mahomes, he knows when to run. If it's a pass play, he waits till the last second. There's a lot of things about JJ McCarthy that the good picking NFL teams like. So, do I think there was any change? Should the Luke Getsy thing preclude them from signing an experienced veteran and go picking another guy? No, I think everything's on the table. Again, I can tell you this for 100% fact. This is not opinion. They've not made any decision yet. Not even close to making a decision yet. Right now, they are in the accumulative stage. And later on, I would say to you, probably somewhere around the 10th, 15th, maybe I think the 10th of March probably is when they'll start formulating, okay, a game plan. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Although I have not been told this, I'm not reporting this as factual. I will not be shocked if here in the next few weeks that reports break that the Raiders have called teams to find out the cost of moving up. You have to do that every year. And there are teams that are below the Raiders that are going to be calling them. Are you willing to trade right now? Not sure. Get back with me. And then there'll be, they're going to set the bar very, very high right now. Well, we'll consider it, but boy, this is what it's going to cost you. I had one GM tell me one time recently when I was asking about pick 13. He told me of a time his team was picking in the teens. And when teams first called him before the combine and before he kind of had a plan, he goes, we would throw out some huge offer, 3 first rounders. Well, nobody's giving you that. But that way, if somebody is just so dead set that they think they can get their guy, great. I don't think the Raiders want to trade Davante Adams, but I think the only guy on that roster who's not tradable for is Maxx Crosby. Somebody could overpay and get Davante. I believe that. I think the Jets could. Aaron Rodgers runs the Jets, if you didn't know that. He is the general manager. And if he said, hey, Woody, I want Davante, this is what it's going to cost for us to get in a Super Bowl next year, whether he's right or not, who knows? And they're willing to make a stupid offer, I think you have to make that trade. But I think Max is the only guy on the table that if you called Tom Telesco today, his answer's no. But I think everyone else would be on the table. So I don't think they're close to doing that place evaluative where they're at. This is just the behind the scenes on the draft, how it's all being laid out. what's going on. They're doing um, massive amounts. In fact, I was told today by someone, Telesco's burning the midnight oil. And if you've not heard that term because you're young, burning the midnight oil, back before there were lights, you'd be burning that oil at night. You could work during the day, but when you didn't have electricity, you had to burn the oil, keep the lamps on. And that's the old meaning, just he's just working a million hours, and really digging in, learning the roster, learning, reviewing scouting reports, all of it. He already had his evaluation on potential free agents that he brought with him, but now it's to a new system. So, he had all of his evaluations of free agents with what Sandy or without what Los Angeles did. So now he has to go through. He can still use his old evaluations, but okay, here's a guy that would have worked for us in Los Angeles, isn't going to work here. So we take that off the board. So that's what's going on. That's opinion and fact and some um, foreshadowing of what I'm seeing at quarterback. And then lastly, I want to talk to you about Maxx. So if you didn't watch the video of our interview with Maxx, I did two of them yesterday. One was a scrum with a bunch of media, and then the other I did not put up. That's coming later on a story I'm working on with Maxx. I've got a story coming. Maxx Crosby, the man you don't know. And I think you're going to really love it. I think you're going to appreciate it and really get a side of Maxx um, that you didn't know. And I'm really excited to bring that to you. So that video is not up there, but go back and watch the video. He talks about calling Getsy. He talks about visiting with Getsy, excuse me, not calling Tom Telesco as soon as he got the job. Just talking about his teammates. What are his teammates' thoughts? Being a leader. He talks about his health. I have a great relationship with Maxx, and he's in great spirits. I'll just tell you that both of his surgery, he had a surgery on his knee and on his thumb, went great. There's no other at this point expected any more surgeries. Sometimes you got to go back in and clean up scar tissue or whatever. He doesn't expect any of that. So that's behind him. He's been rehabbing for several weeks on the um, knee. That's going fantastic. His right arm is in a sling, but that's because they did surgery on the thumb. But he's in great spirits, just tremendous spirits. He's feeling great. He's fired up. The team is fired up. This is a team that is all one-minded right now. And there's going to be great participation in a lot of things. We'll just leave it there. This team has bought in. And I was very impressed watching Maxx yesterday work with some kids at a local high school. But just getting a chance to talk to him, I know I have to be careful here. I did a podcast about Maxx Crosby finding his voice. If you didn't watch it, go back and watch it. But there were a lot of people that took a lot of shots at Maxx for trying to run the franchise, and that wasn't what he was trying to do. This is a man that most of last year risked his life, not just because of CTE, but at one time his body's septic from an infection with his bursa that had to just get cleaned up. But he went out there, he didn't care. Everybody telling him to shut it down. There isn't one person that would have been mad at him for shutting it down, but he would have been. I remember him telling me, what do I say to all those fans who buy my jersey that come to one game that want to see me? Gee, I didn't play. I was hurt. If I can play, I'm going to play. I owe it to my teammates. I owe it to Mark Davis, who's paying me. I mean, that's him. That's his work ethic. He wasn't saying if AP doesn't get the job, I demand a trade because he was being a bully. He was saying, I'm going to have to look at everything. Because if I think my organization repeatedly makes mistakes that are precluding us from winning, if I'm a guy that's going to play when my life's in danger, I want to know my franchise has the same commitment. And he did not tell me this, but I believe it hurt him the way some fans reacted because some people tried to make it sound like, and this is just our hot take society, oh, let's take a hot take rather than thinking reasonably and rationally and critically. Let's just have a hot take. I want to be the first to call somebody out so I can say, I called it, whatever. And that his heart was, I'm going to give everything I got. And I didn't pull this when you hired Josh McDaniels. But if I'm going to be this guy, you better know you better be that franchise. If I'm going to be him, then you got to be them. And I think it hurt him. And it was good for me. It was the first time I had seen him in person um, since the surgeries. It was good for me to see that smile and that let's go back in him. And I want everyone to know Max knows he spoke up. Those players know they spoke up. AP's success or failure is going to reflect as much on them as him. Josh McDaniels failed. I don't think anybody's blaming the players. If AP fails, they're going to blame the players, and rightfully so. This is the guy you wanted. Okay, we're giving him to you. Okay, go make it happen. So, a lot of good stuff going on. Obviously, we're here at the Super Bowl. I'm not going to get into a lot of Super Bowl because, I mean, there are some things, if they're germane to the Raiders, I'll discuss. Um, and sometimes I talk about macro NFL issues that may not be Raider specific, but do impact the Raiders. Nothing really happened today that was impactful of the Raiders. But a lot of good stuff. Um, Antonio Pierce was on McAfee, the third hour, which is only on YouTube. Go watch it. But so much great stuff out there. Make sure you're watching the Maxx Crosby video we put up. I just want to again take a second and let you know I greatly appreciate all of you. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Please click those buttons and do it again. Thanks for sharing. There's a lot of people that charge for content and it's worth it. They're really good. They're really good. So, and I want you to know, I in no way think that I'm the only Raider content provider who does a good job. There are several. So this is not geared towards them, but never pay somebody for what we give you for free. So make sure that if you're paying for it, you're getting something that you're not getting here. And enjoy it. We appreciate you. We are so grateful for you. Again, you can follow me on IG. If you're older, that's instant. It's not instant. It's Instagram. I used to say instant. I apologize. I was educated. Instagram, IG, at Hondo SR. You can also find me on Twitter, formerly known as X, when you go to, X, formerly known as Twitter, Hondo Carpenter. We'll see you all there. Remember, go to si.com/NFL/Raiders. Click on and read all the stories, but in the upper right-hand corner, click on newsletter. Make sure you sign up so you never miss another Raiders story again. So from all of us to all of you, hope that you're doing well. God bless you, everybody. Thanks for joining us.